Most people live their entire lives obeying rules they never chose, walking blindfolded through a world run by invisible ants. But what if you could see behind the curtain? What if there was a silent blueprint guiding those who rise while others remain ordinary? Niccolo Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few who dare to rule instead of follow. Power doesn't come from kindness. It comes from perception, timing, and the ability to strike without warning. Society tells you to play nice, to fit in, to stay safe. But those who hold influence know that control comes not from being loved, but from being needed, respected, or feared. And those who understand this never play fair again. There are forces that shape conversations, control boardrooms, and even dictate family dynamics, yet they're never named. They exist in silence, in tension, in the way someone lowers their voice in a meeting, or the glance that makes a room quiet. Machiavelli would call it strategy. We call it survival, and those who lack it get used. You're not here by accident. Something in you refuses mediocrity. You've seen people with less talent lead people with more. You've watched charm overpower credentials, confidence silence intelligence. It's not magic, it's psychology. And once you understand how it works, you'll never unsee it. This video isn't just information, it's transformation. It will reshape how you walk into a room, how you handle betrayal, and how you silence noise without raising your voice. You'll learn how respect is earned, how dominance begins with self-control, and why every powerful figure cultivates an aura before they build an empire. Throughout this journey, you'll absorb teachings hidden between politics, war, religion, and even family dinners. Leadership, emotional leverage, influence, and spiritual resilience aren't found in schools, but you'll find them here. Every insight is a move on the board, every pause a strategy. As we unfold each principle through the sharp, timeless eyes of Machiavelli, you'll begin to see not just who holds power, but why. You'll recognize manipulation not as evil, but as inevitable. You'll see that authority isn't granted by title, but by posture, and auto-dominance is your first fortress. But be warned, once you've entered this world, your perspective won't return to neutral. You'll start noticing who commands silence, who plays the fool to win, who disappears just to be missed. That's when you'll know you're already inside the game. And that's where our first principle begins.
Power begins with perception, not truth. Power isn't about being right, it's about being seen as right. In Machiavellian strategy, perception trumps facts. People don't follow truth, they follow confidence, presence, and the illusion of certainty. You could hold the deepest wisdom and still be ignored if you don't know how to carry it. So the first lesson is brutal. Truth without posture is powerless. Leaders shape narratives long before they make decisions. The moment you walk into a room, your influence has already begun by the way you move, pause, and look. People read you before they hear you. And here's the secret. They believe what feels powerful, not necessarily what is. This is why image isn't vanity, it's strategy. Take Caesar, for example. Before he ever led Rome, he conquered minds. He dressed with intention, spoke with purpose, and even controlled his silences. It wasn't deception, it was intelligent framing. Do you do the same? Or are you leaving your power at the door because you think being yourself is enough? The modern world rewards those who design how they're perceived. Job interviews, negotiations, dating, content creation. Perception is the game within the game. Even spiritual leaders use it. Ever notice how their tone, posture, and pacing create an aura? That's no accident. It's a form of influence rooted in self-mastery. To develop this, start watching people who hold power quietly. CEOs who speak little but lead everything. Pastors who command rooms with stillness. Study actors, politicians, even con artists, not to imitate, but to understand how authority is crafted. The surface holds more than we give credit for. If you're soft-spoken, don't fight to be louder. Learn how to make silence feel intentional. If you're expressive, control when you explode and when you withdraw. The point isn't to become someone else. It's to become your own weaponized version. This is where auto-dominance begins. So ask yourself, do people see you as powerful? Do they wait for your input or talk over it? Do they follow your lead or merely tolerate your presence? The answer to those questions will tell you how much silent power you carry. And it's not about changing others. It starts with changing how you project. Because once you've mastered perception, something strange happens. People begin to treat you as if you already hold the crown. And when that moment comes, your strategy must evolve. Because now you'll face something far more dangerous than doubt: envy.
Never outshine, outlast. One of the fastest ways to lose power is to expose your brilliance too early. Machiavelli teaches that the throne doesn't go to the brightest, it goes to the most patient. When you outshine your mentor, you awaken insecurity. When you rush to lead, you threaten the current. And when you're too eager to prove, you reveal too much too soon. There's a delicate art to strategic invisibility. Holding back isn't weakness, it's restraint. When you make others feel safe, they stop watching you. That's when you grow in silence. If you've ever been passed over, sidelined, or even sabotaged for doing too much, this is why. Power builds best in the shadows. Consider how nature teaches this. The moon rises quietly, while the sun blinds. One is seen, the other is felt. That's the type of authority that endures, the one that doesn't compete, it waits. When people are busy performing, you're observing. When they're proving, you're preparing. Real dominance comes when no one sees it coming. Let your manager have the credit. Let your partner believe they're steering. Let your enemies think you're naive. What you're really doing is building a library of patterns, weaknesses, and leverage points. People reveal everything when they don't feel threatened, and that's when your true strategy begins. We live in an age obsessed with instant visibility, likes, reels, tweets, applause. But power isn't built by volume, it's built by longevity. Those who learn to hold their emotions, opinions, and brilliance with calm precision rise when others burn out. That's not manipulation, it's self-governance. Auto-dominance isn't about shutting yourself down, it's about choosing your moment, knowing when to speak, when to vanish, when to let silence do the damage. You're not hiding. You're controlling the stage before stepping on it. That's real emotional and spiritual development in motion. Think of it this way. Storms don't announce themselves. Neither do leaders who lead from within. If you're constantly needing to be seen, ask yourself, what fear are you feeding? Because often, the need to be noticed is the biggest leak in your personal power. And once you master the ability to stay in the background without losing the mission, something shifts. People begin to underestimate you, and there's no greater weapon in the hands of a strategist than being underestimated. That's when we move to the next law.
Influence is a dance, not a declaration. Most people think influence means telling others what to do. But the Machiavellian understands it's more about guiding someone into thinking it was their idea. You don't need to force your way into power when you can shape the river and let others sail where you want. That's influence, and it begins with deep observation. Pay attention to how people crave validation, purpose, and direction. If you can speak to that hunger without being obvious, you lead without resistance. Influence is subtle. It's the friend who plants a thought that grows over days. It's the boss who never yells, but whose silence shifts a whole room. It's the partner who suggests, never demands. Want influence in real life? Start by asking more than you speak. When someone tells you their dream, don't correct, amplify. Say things like, "What if you went even further?" Or, "I can see that working." This builds respect, not resistance. And where respect grows, authority follows, quietly, steadily, unshakably. Machiavelli knew influence is easier when people feel seen, not challenged. That's why the best persuaders don't argue, they mirror. Mirror energy, values, even fears, not to deceive, but to connect. It's emotional development with strategic intent. The person who understands another's desire can guide them anywhere. But here's the catch. Influence dies when you need credit. The moment you say, "That was my idea," you lose the spell. Let others believe they discovered the path. That's how leaders are born behind the curtain. And if you're wondering why people don't listen to your ideas, maybe it's because you're trying to own them too soon. Think of influence like dancing with your hands behind your back. You're leading, but no one sees the grip. Every nod, every silence, every well-timed phrase, it matters. This is leadership without ego, and it's far more dangerous than brute authority, because no one ever sees it coming until it's too late. So if your voice isn't being heard, stop shouting. Start shifting. Ask better questions. Show that you understand their perspective better than they do. People trust guides, not judges. And when they trust you, they'll follow you even into discomfort. And that's when we move from influence into the realm of control, but not the kind that's obvious, the kind that builds from strategic distance. That's where we go next.
Control from a distance. Power hides in shadows. To truly lead, you don't need to micromanage. You need to position. The most effective authority doesn't hover. It delegates, watches, and corrects from a distance. Think of a general on the hill, not in the trench. That's where power is clearest, when it doesn't need to prove itself up close. Controlling from a distance isn't about apathy, it's about perspective. When you're too close, emotion clouds your strategy. But when you step back, you can see the full map. The moves, the traps, the openings. Machiavelli understood that influence rooted in emotional detachment is often the sharpest, because calm decisions are lethal ones. Let others move. Let them believe they're free. Meanwhile, you observe, guide with subtle correction, and pull the strings when no one's looking. That's strategic leadership, not reactive, but predictive. You don't need to be everywhere if your presence is felt everywhere.
And the way you build that? Systems, symbols, and silence. In daily life, this applies too. Want respect in your team? Stop checking every detail. Instead, set principles. Communicate your values once, and then hold others accountable to them. True authority doesn't repeat itself. It teaches once and lets the consequences teach the rest. From a spiritual lens, distance isn't cold, it's clarity. Think about a monk in the mountains. His power doesn't lie in preaching every day, but in being untouchable yet deeply felt. That's the kind of influence that shapes minds without direct confrontation. And that's rare. That's memorable. If people only obey when you're present, you're not in charge. You're a babysitter. But if they carry your standards when you're gone, you've stepped into dominance by presence, not by noise. This applies in parenting, in business, in relationships. Stop chasing respect. Command it by absence. You might lose popularity when you create distance. People will call you cold, aloof, maybe arrogant. Let them. It's often the noise you silence that shows how much they need your attention. When you're not always available, every word you speak becomes heavier. That's the power of selective engagement. And once you've learned how to lead from behind the curtain, something wild happens. Others begin to seek your approval more than your instruction. And from there, you gain control without command. But beware. What happens when your silence becomes too heavy?
Emotional detachment, the art of cold clarity. You cannot lead if you bleed over every blow. Machiavelli knew that feelings cloud judgment, and judgment directs strategy. Emotional detachment is not about being heartless, it's about choosing where your heart won't be held hostage. When you're reactive, you're predictable. When you're calm, you become unreadable. The most dangerous person in any room isn't loud, it's the one who's not moved. While others panic, defend, or lash out, the strategist calculates. Imagine a poker table. The player with the most to lose is usually the most expressive, but the one who reveals nothing, that's the one reshaping the game silently. We're trained to express everything today. Vulnerability is trendy, but for those who seek power with purpose, not every emotion deserves a stage. Save your truth for those who've earned it. The rest, get your mask. Not out of manipulation, but protection. Self-mastery isn't fake, it's sacred. You don't need to numb yourself to detach. You just need to discipline the order of response. Feel first, react last. Between stimulus and action lives the realm of choice. That's where autodominio is built. You train this daily. Someone cuts you off? Breathe. A friend betrays you? Pause. Clarity always arrives after silence. If you're in a position of leadership, this is your armor. Emotions create ripples, and when you're in charge, your ripple is a tidal wave. People respond to your energy even more than your words. If your mood controls the room, someone else is holding the remote. You're not in power, you're in a loop. In war, the general doesn't cry when a soldier falls, not out of cruelty, but because clarity must lead compassion. You too must learn when to feel and when to freeze, especially when stakes are high. The more control you develop over your impulses, the more you gain influence over the outcome. There's a spiritual freedom in this too. You begin to move from reactive to reflective, from triggered to targeted. Your peace becomes weaponized, not to destroy, but to direct. You'll notice people treat you differently when they can't provoke you. Suddenly, your presence commands something deeper than attention. It demands respect. And when you learn to keep your center untouched while the world spins around you, you step into a zone where nothing owns you anymore. But what happens when others start relying on your calm to guide their chaos?
Master the mirror, the power of silent reflection. The mirror never argues, it reveals. That's the principle behind one of the oldest tools of influence, reflection. Machiavelli didn't just study power, he studied perception. When you reflect someone's energy, beliefs, and values back to them subtly, you earn a strange kind of trust. They see themselves in you, and they let their guard down. This doesn't mean you become a chameleon. It means you understand before you express. The average person wants to be understood, but the strategist wants to understand first. When you master the mirror, people feel seen, but you're the one holding the lens. That's influence disguised as empathy. Use this in conversation. If someone's driven by logic, speak in reasons. If they're emotional, speak in stories. This isn't manipulation, it's communication at its highest level. Speak the language of their soul so you can guide their actions. That's how you lead without resistance. Think about interviews, negotiations, or even family arguments. People push less when they feel validated. Rapport builds authority, and rapport builds authority. You don't need to prove your power if others feel you get them. It's a quiet form of dominio de controlling the energy without overpowering the person. But here's the catch. If you mirror too much, you vanish. Don't lose your shape to fit in someone else's frame. The strategist reflects just enough to create connection, but not so much that they disappear. Your identity is your compass. If you give that up, you're not influencing, you're dissolving. Great leaders balance reflection with redirection. They mirror just long enough to earn trust, then subtly shift the direction of thought. It's a dance between empathy and persuasion. You don't shove ideas down someone's throat, you lace them into their own worldview. That's authority earned, not demanded. Spiritually, this is powerful too. When you reflect others without judgment, you become a safe space for transformation. And in a world where everyone is yelling to be heard, the person who listens with presence becomes magnetic. Sometimes silence speaks the loudest. And when people feel you understand them better than they understand themselves, they follow. But what happens when they start looking to your mirror to define who they are?
Isolation as a weapon, strength in solitude. Most fear being alone. The strategist uses it to recalibrate. Solitude isn't weakness, it's where power regenerates. Machiavelli understood that clarity doesn't come in the crowd's chaos, but in the silence of self-confrontation. When you're surrounded, you reflect others. When you're alone, you rediscover dominio de si. Leadership demands internal stillness. If your voice is lost in the noise of others, your direction blurs. When was the last time you sat alone? No phone, no input, just your thoughts. That space reveals the real you and the real strategy hiding beneath surface distraction. The most powerful plans are born in silence. Isolation also protects. When you're too accessible, you become too expected. Familiarity breeds contempt, but distance breeds desire. The philosopher king stands just far enough to be respected, just close enough to be felt. Don't fear being misunderstood in solitude. It means you're no longer defined by others.
Even in relationships, this holds weight. Taking time alone sharpens emotional clarity. You learn to respond, not react. It's in solitude that emotional autodominio matures. Instead of venting your storm on someone, you sit with it. You lead yourself before you attempt to lead anyone else. In business, creators and strategists use solitude to plan moves the noisy ones never see coming. They vanish to re-emerge with direction. Artists retreat. Athletes train in silence. Even warriors meditate before the war. Distance isn't detachment, it's preparation. And preparation is the root of strategic leadership. Spiritually, solitude becomes sacred. Think prophets, monks, mystics, they all withdrew before their revelations. Alone doesn't mean abandoned, it means aligned. You stop performing, you stop pleasing, you start perceiving. And in that perception, respect is born, not just from others, but from within. Some will call it selfish, others will feel rejected. Let them. If you fear losing people because you took time for yourself, you never had real connection, just dependence. Real influence grows stronger in your absence, and when you return as someone undeniable. But what happens when the power you built in silence begins to threaten those who only feel safe when you're small?
Visibility is leverage, crafting a strategic presence. Power hides in how you're seen or not seen. Machiavelli wouldn't walk into a room uncalculated. He knew presence is a tool, not a given. Being visible too often weakens the effect. Being seen with intention amplifies it. Great leaders don't chase the spotlight. They let it search for them. Your presence must feel earned, not assumed. Speak rarely, but when you do, make it count. People respect what feels rare. Silence isn't absence, it's tension. When you learn to control your appearances, your image begins to work for you long after you've left the room. That's how authority extends its reach. Think about it. Celebrities stay relevant not by being everywhere, but by disappearing strategically. Mystery triggers curiosity, and curiosity builds influence faster than proof. In leadership, overexposure breeds overfamiliarity. If you're always available, you're subconsciously signaling that your time holds little value. But when you show up sparingly, with purpose, every word hits deeper. Even in personal relationships, absence at the right moment creates emotional gravity. There's a spiritual mirror here, too. Even God, in many traditions, hides his face. Not because he's absent, but because the hidden demands pursuit. You don't chase what's easy. You chase what you feel might vanish. Use this in your own life. Be accessible, but never common. Be known, but never obvious. On social media, this becomes even more tactical. Don't just post to be seen, post to be remembered. Craft messages that echo. Appear when your words will cut through the noise. Disappear when your presence becomes predictable. That unpredictability builds respect without effort. But don't mistake absence for laziness. Behind the scenes, the strategist is always building. Your best moves should never be announced. They should be revealed in impact. When others finally see what you've built in silence, they won't ask how. You'll already be too far ahead. And as your visibility grows, so does your influence. But what happens when your shadow starts speaking louder than your voice?
Chaos as camouflage. Confuse to control. The average mind craves order. The strategic mind knows chaos creates opportunity. Machiavelli recognized that in moments of confusion, the bold rewrite the rules. When everyone is disoriented, the one who sees through the fog becomes the unexpected leader. Control doesn't always come from clarity. It often comes from unpredictability. To control a room, sometimes you must unbalance it. When people can't read your next move, they start to second-guess their own. That hesitation? That's power. Predictability breeds comfort, but ambiguity breeds dependence. They stop trusting their instincts and start leaning on your decisions instead. This is why some of the greatest strategists appear eccentric. They're not disorganized, they're unreadable. By creating mystery, they force others into reaction mode. And once someone is reacting, they're not leading, they're following. This applies in negotiations, politics, even dating. Uncertainty is leverage. Use chaos wisely. Never be the fool who lives in disarray. Be the storm wearing a crown. Create confusion when it serves your purpose, but only when your inner world is stable. The difference between the manipulator and the master is autodominio. You can't lead chaos unless you've conquered your own. Look at modern politics. Distraction campaigns, contradictory messages, emotional baiting. These aren't accidents, they're tactics. Confuse the audience, divide their focus, and dominate the middle. It's cold, but it's real. Power doesn't always wear a noble face. Sometimes it laughs behind the mask of confusion. Spiritually, this can feel dangerous, but even ancient texts speak of divine mystery, paradoxes that humble the proud. Not everything sacred is clear, and not everything unclear is evil. In your life, try this. Next time you're pressured for clarity, offer calm confidence instead. You don't owe explanations, you owe results. This doesn't mean being dishonest. It means protecting your process. Let them see the surface, but never the blueprint. Chaos protects the blueprint. If they can't predict you, they can't prepare for you. That's where true strategy thrives, in the shadows of uncertainty. And as confusion clouds their vision, your quiet plan takes shape. But when you finally move, will they even realize who's been pulling the strings all along?
The illusion of morality. Power beyond the mask. Machiavelli never preached evil. He exposed the gap between appearances and intentions. Most people wear the mask of virtue not because they are good, but because goodness sells. In the world of power, it's not about being moral. It's about appearing moral while staying untouchable. This isn't permission to be cruel, it's clarity to be strategic. A leader guided only by emotion gets manipulated. A leader who understands perception stays ahead. Be kind, yes, but understand when kindness is a trap. People often expect virtue from others to control them. True autonomy is choosing when to obey the rules and when to bend them. Every society has its moral myths. Play fair, they say, until someone breaks the rules and wins.
Then the same crowd that judged you starts cheering. Power rewrites what's acceptable. Respect isn't always earned by purity, it's often built by impact. And impact demands boldness, not approval. Even in family dynamics, this applies. A child may manipulate a parent through guilt. A friend may weaponize morality to shame you into submission. When you spot it, you reclaim control. The goal isn't to lose your ethics, it's to stop letting others dictate your boundaries through them. Look at great reformers, revolutionaries, even prophets. They often defied norms that were seen as moral in their time. Was it rebellion or higher wisdom? Sometimes choosing spiritual truth means breaking social peace. And that's uncomfortable for those who fear confrontation more than they crave authenticity. You must decide. Will you wear the mask that pleases others or build the face that commands influence? Morality is often a mirror. Some people only reflect what you want to see. Others reveal what you refuse to face. Leadership means facing yourself first, and then deciding who you'll become. This doesn't mean walking through life as a villain. It means you understand the theater. You choose your lines. You control your stage. And sometimes you even write the script for those who never knew they were in your play to begin with. But when the curtain falls and all the masks come off, what power remains in the silence that follows?
You've just walked through the minds of the unseen rulers, the tacticians of history, and the philosopher who dared expose their code. But now the question echoes, what will you do with this power? Because knowing isn't enough. Respect, influence, leadership, they don't respond to theory, they bow to movement. Maybe a few laws made you uneasy. Good. Growth begins when comfort ends. True development, emotional, spiritual, personal, comes from tension, from seeing yourself clearly and choosing to rise anyway. The ones who hesitate are ruled. The ones who act rule. Now pause. Of everything you've just learned, which law hit hardest? Which one felt like it was written for you? The quiet one? The cruel one? The wise one? Comment it below, not for me, but for you. Putting it into words locks the idea in your subconscious. And maybe you're wondering, is it really okay to think like this? If you're still asking, it means you care. That's your edge. You'll apply these truths without losing your soul. And that balance, that's what makes you rare. That's what builds lasting authority. So here's your path. Stop asking for permission. Start living with strategy. Read deeper, act smarter. Speak fewer words that carry more weight. And if anything in this video unsettled you, good. That means it matters. That means it works. Subscribe if you're ready to command your reality, not just react to it. Hit the bell because the next lesson will take you even further into the unseen mechanics of power. And don't leave yet. Watch the video that just appeared on your screen. It'll sharpen your perspective and deepen your advantage. Remember, your silence can shape nations, your presence can bend rooms, and your mind, once mastered, makes you untouchable.